So why don't you just put the into the record in the argument and put your hand on the Bible, swear to God you walked on the moon. Bible. You have the opportunity to have $5,000.
The meeting is not open.
Well, you have $5,000 cash. You can give it to charity if you swear on the Bible that you walked on the moon. Why not? Why won't you do it? So why don't you put your hand on the Bible and swear to God that you walked on the moon?
Mr. Cyborg has made a fool of himself in front of the world.
I think we all remember the Challenger explosion that took place in 1986. It tragically took the lives of all 7 astronauts on board. As a couple decades later, this thing called the internet came about, and someone allegedly found almost all of those astronauts alive and well, many using the same exact names. As you can see here, we have Challenger astronaut Judith Resnick and also Judith Resnick, Yale law professor. Michael J. Smith, the pilot of the Challenger astronaut, and also professor at University of Wisconsin, now retired Michael J. Smith. Commander Dick Scobie, who is now president of Cows and Trees. Now, if you'll notice, they all have the exact same faces 30 some odd years later, the same exact name. Miss Resnick was questioned at Yale by a journalist, and she panicked and ran from the camera. Why?
Conspiracy about space shuttle. No, I want to be polite.
Mr. Michael J. Smith was also questioned, and he said, yeah, we look alike, but that's not me.
Are you Michael Smith?
Yeah.
Are you aware that there's a rumor on the internet that people are saying it?
Yeah, it's not me, obviously. I mean, it's interesting that the Michael J. Smith that was the astronaut looks something like me when we were younger, but really not.
Yeah, you just sure look alike. It's the same.
I know the facial thing, but that's what we look like. What? 40 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to believe that 3 people from one space flight have exact lookalikes that have the same age and same exact names.
Sir,
Mr.
I'm going to have
Scobie
to. I'm going to have to stop.
Sir, this is a public comment.
I know what it is, sir. I'm very familiar with the public comment.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Will you let me finish for at least 10
No,
seconds?
sir. You're finished. Thank you.
Thank you for taking away my freedom of speech today in here.
I did not take away your freedom of speech.
Yes, you did.
I don't want to hear it from you
Just
people
because
down
this is
here.
an uncomfortable
Stop.
topic.
Officers, please remove this man from the room.
You just violated the First Amendment.
Been nearly a week since their picture-perfect splashdown in the Pacific. Welcome home. It's good to have you. 10 days of being as close as human beings can be. Round trip, 700,000-mile flight with some incredible snapshots from that stunning eclipse to close-ups of the massive lunar craters and photos of our own planet.
And with doing everything we knew we came there to do, and we were finally doing it.
I will say it was just a very intense moment. Because we had never seen or felt this before. We had the lights turned down just like we did in our spacecraft. So I could tell that we were inside a fireball.
You've meant so much. You guys are not just astronauts. You brought us joy. You brought us healing. And you just mean so much to us.
Hey friends, welcome to my channel, KarineAlourde Mental Gems. This channel is dedicated to leveling up in all areas of your life. So let us learn together, read together, but most importantly, grow together. Now, without further ado, let's get into this video. Now, this video is interesting. One of my favorite topics that I've been discussing for a while, and I've had all the information, but for a while, I didn't know how to bring this into YouTube, because when you hear the term flat earth or you start talking about the moon landing being fake, everyone wants to put like a tinfoil hat over your head and call you a conspiracy theorist or you're crazy. And in my spirit and my soul, I'm just like, something's not adding up though. It never made sense to me. And I'm a history nut. I love history. And I just didn't think history made sense, the one that we were taught. So with a lot of praying and fasting, like I said, I went on a journey with Yahuwah, and I prayed and fasted a lot for information. And step by step, when I'm ready for new information, he gives it to me. But there's some information we're just not ready for, and he will not give to you. Just like he told Daniel, right? Hey, this is not meant for you to understand. This is for a future generation. Rest now, right? He told Daniel that. So for a lot of us, there's just some answers we're not going to get. But this video aims to put some pieces together with, why do you have this pit in your gut that things aren't what it seems? Comment below if you've always had that pit. Like the moon landing, it's just doesn't add up, right? The earth being a globe, a sphere, just a spinning ball, aimlessly spinning around, and there's other planets gravitating. There's so much we're going to get into. with this video. I'm only going to mention the Rothschilds once when we talk about NASA, the foundation of it, but I'm not going to talk about these people like that anymore because YouTube, y'all see what YouTube do to me. They really don't like that. And if I'm speaking of a group, you guys know I am going to say they. And if you're unfamiliar of who I'm talking about when I say they, just check in the comments. Someone will clarify it for you. But now you understand why when people talk, they say they, the powers that be. Trust me. Now, if you've been following the History They Try to Hide series that I've done here, it's pinned in the comments, you will understand who they are and why people don't say their names. Not only is it legally good for you, but also it just prevents a lot. Okay, so also in the past videos, I had to be very articulate, very careful, very cautious with what I was saying, just to take some precautions legally. And so many of you guys are like, Karine, we want the passion back. I'm like, hey, with certain videos, y'all can't get passionate Karine that just flies off the handle saying whatever. I have to be very composed, and even my voice, if something's too passionate, I would have rather have somebody else read it for me than me for myself. So I'm glad you guys can pick that up, but I'm still here. It's still me, Karine. I will be back on camera soon. It's just easier with these type of heavy videos to do voiceover because I do write a script. With these type of videos, you need a script. I can't just speak off the dome. You just can't. There's a lot behind the scenes reasons why, right? So it makes it easier, and I'll just put images for you guys. So thank you for understanding that, because I saw a lot of questions that's asking, like, did something happen to Karine? She hasn't been on camera in forever. I'm still here by the grace of the Most High, and I'm not going anywhere. The content will remain consistent, okay? He is the one that will sustain me. But I do have a question for Christians. And y'all know how I feel about the word Christian and why I don't label myself a Christian. I'm the follower of the way. I follow Yahuwah, the Most High, the creator of all the universe, and just the Bible in itself. I'm a follower of the Bible. But Christianity has its name because it has been infiltrated, and there's a lot of Hellenistic ways, and there's a lot of biblical ways in it. And if you watch the history planned, we get into Christian mysticism, just history. Please just don't get too defensive or knock anything until you go through the history. But I do have a lot of people that are secular that watch the channel and be like, "Oh, you Christians." And I'm like, I don't even label myself a Christian. So we're just seeking truth here, and it's always going to be biblically founded. Okay. So on a biblical perspective, I want to tackle the flat earth theory. I want to tackle NASA. Many of you guys don't know the origins of NASA, its occult ties and its foundations, and how it's tied to the central banking system, the World Bank, and how that's attached. And we already talked about the central banking system so much. Whenever you hear the central banking system, we're talking about them, they. We're talking about that specific family as well. Okay, we already talked about that. And if you don't know who, check out the previous videos on there. So how it all ties, we're going to talk about even prophetically. There's going to be more videos on this series. It's not the last that's going to tie it all together. But I have a question for Christians that believe these people have been to the moon and they believe in NASA. I want to ask you guys a question that believe in the Bible. Can the Most High lie? Can the Most High lie? You can't call yourself a Christian and believe in NASA and the moon landing, all of that, because then you would call God a liar. And we've already done videos of the occult ties of science, the beginning of it. I've done videos on that. We go way back on the founders, who they are. So that's why I always stress to watch these videos in order, because it just makes sense. So nothing I say will make sense to you if you're just joining on here and you want to argue. Okay, I do recommend you go look at the history of the founders of science, the founders of philosophy, and all of those, and where those ideologies came, the spirits that they themselves said that they spoke to that gave them that enlightenment. So to call God a liar, this is what I mean by that. So Nimrod in the Tower of Babel, let's tackle that. Nimrod, God said, and when I say God, I'm talking about Yahuwah, but for those who are watching, we're just going to keep it simple, but that's his name. He said, man won't be able to ascend to God. And he even intercepted it by confusing the languages when men built the Tower of Babel, right? So he saw men have been trying to reach the heavens forever. They've been trying to go to the heavens forever, right? And God saw that. They tried to build a tower. That's where all the confusing language came. And it was a pride of men. It was men that wanted to be God, because that was the original sin. We talk about the apple, the symbology of it. Because you got to read the Bible and that tone as well to see what is the greatest sin, what is apostasy. We talk about all of that, all in this video. So now to say that, did God change would mean that God somehow along the way in this 21st, 22nd century decided to change. It was like, well, you know what? Forget what happened to the Tower of Babel. Yes, you guys can leave the Earth's atmosphere and go to the moon. Yeah, that can happen. I know I did that and confused the languages in this, but I lost my power and I go back on my word and I'm a liar. That's what we are implying. And how can we praise God and then argue with people about the moon landing? Because the people that you'll see that's in comments that are calling flat earthers or people that want to question the moon landing crazy are Christians. So I'm always very curious, like, are you really a believer of the Most High? Because where does that come from?
In ancient Babylonia, in an age so long ago that the exact millennium remains in question, the Tower of Babel began construction. The dawn of warfare, some believe, was initiated by a fallen angel whose trespass against God was pride. It was to be the single greatest achievement of the human race. A tower so tall that its summit would reach the heavens. Time passed, nations fell. A machine age emerged. The next age embarked into the annals of human history. Perhaps the last age. The space age. Powerful nations spent billions in unabashed rivalry to outdo the other. The Soviet Union launched the first orbiting satellite, the first animal, the first man. Richard Nixon, president at the time, had this to say about the latest work of the human hand. It is the greatest week since creation, since the origin of the universe itself. The greatest event since the laying of the foundation of the seas, since the design and formation of the delicate human eye through which all these things are perceived. The building of the tallest tower for the sole purpose of standing out among the races was never finished. The crowning achievement of humankind. The greatest boast of the species. The event in human history most associated with pride in our own accomplishments. Landing on the moon. 20 years later, and years behind schedule, the same space program couldn't put into Earth orbit a telescope with a lens that focused. And yet 2 decades earlier, a mission 100 times more complicated worked on its first occasion. A funny thing happened on the way to the moon.
But right now, we need a 10 to 12-year program that has as its ultimate goal the man domination of space. And if we don't, we're going to be in trouble. We must assure our preeminence in the peaceful exploration of outer space, focusing on an expedition to the moon in this decade.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Throughout the history of rivalry and war, astute generals of lesser armies than their counterparts have used deceit and misinformation as a method to achieve victory. Star Wars' missile defense program rigged tests to make it seem more advanced than it really was. The aim was to fool the Soviet Union about U.S. military readiness during the Cold War. In addition, the Apollo program had already spent billions of dollars. If it failed to achieve its goal with such an investment, it would indeed be a large and bitter pill for the taxpayers to swallow. If adjusted for inflation to the 21st century, was $135 billion. $135 billion could feed 2 million people for their entire lives. It could also buy 2 million two-bedroom houses. The fact that the Apollo program was so departmentalized, with various construction and test sites around the country, meant that only a few people saw the whole picture. And for the first time ever, there was no independent press coverage of such an historical event. Whatever pictures and sound were distributed to the public was strictly controlled and previewed by the federal government.
Before we get into the flat earth and all of that, I want to lay the foundations for you of NASA. Like, what is this organization? Where did it come from? Who is funding it? And what is going on? Okay. So there's a one world prophecy, and it's a tool. NASA is a tool that is behind the one world prophecy. Behind, when you talk about the United Nations, you talk about climate change, you talk about weather machines, you talk about all of these things, all came from the funding of NASA, right? And why does this matter? People that work for NASA, majority of all the astronauts that you've seen that have quote unquote been to the moon or had associations with NASA are known Freemasons per their own admission. This is not Karine saying that, right? So they're all in some brotherhood and other secret societies that are too secret for even us to know. Like I said, there's a lot of things we wouldn't know. Just like the Most High showed Ezekiel what was happening in the church I was hidden in secret. They didn't know he was watching, right? There's things we still don't know.
Do you know about NASA's connection to Freemasonry and the occult? You ever notice how all their mission names have roots in mythology? Apollo, Artemis, Osiris. Several key NASA figures were Freemasons. Buzz Aldrin, the second man on the moon, was a 33rd degree Freemason. See, he even brought a Masonic flag to the moon. John Glenn, the first American to orbit Earth, was also a Mason. And Kenneth Kleinert, who managed the Apollo program, was also a 33rd degree Mason. And then there was Jack Parson. He's one of the founders of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. He wasn't a Freemason, but he was an occultist who practiced ritual magic. He believed in merging science with mysticism. He used to hang out with L. Ron Hubbard too, you know, the guy in Scientology. He even performed rituals to summon what he called a new age of enlightenment. I know what I think, but what do you think?
So this information I got directly from the NASA website, okay? So they aren't even hiding this stuff. You just have to know what to look for. So this information I'm about to read to you, I got from the NASA website. Wait, they might change it if this video blow up or something or have less disclosure. But also NASA doesn't like to give people too much disclosure. You're going to see in later clips, right? Per their own words, because I like to show you clips of actual astronauts and ex-astronauts that follow this, because I can't just tell you my words for myself. Like I said, I always knew this stuff, but I didn't know how to articulate it without being labeled crazy. So this is why I like to show you these long clips with people talking about it, because I want you to see from the professionals and experienced people, ex-astronauts, people that were in the field that want to come out, whistleblowers, etc. So you can see this is not a conspiracy. So if you want to look into the World Bank website and you want to look into the NASA.gov website, you'll find this information and you just got to know what to look for. And I'm just putting it all together for you, but I'm just gathering it. Now, it's NASA and central banks interact primarily through scientific data partnerships, financial technology, and fiscal. And we talked about with the central banks, who they are owned by, right? What family owns that? The World Bank uses NASA satellite data for environmental management, while research analyzes how NASA's post-quantum cryptography findings apply to digital currency security. Separately, U.S. Bank manages NASA travel cards, and the FedWire system handles NASA payments. The World Bank has partnered with NASA and USAID to use satellite data for water resource and agricultural management in the MENA region. Historically, NASA space technology influenced computerized financial transaction systems used by banks for real-time data. The banks you're using, all of these things operated by data. You're going to say, Karine, where do they get all that funding from? It's us, our taxpayer money is why you can't even put gas or afford groceries, right? Research published on the NASA EDS platform examines how central banks manage climate-related risk, including stranded assets, right? The Federal Reserve banks provide the Fedwire Fund Service, a real-time gross settlement system that enables participants to initiate funds transfer that are immediate, final, and irrevocable once processed. International and domestic financial institutions can use Fedwire to send a wire transfer in United States dollars directly to the bank, to the United States Treasury, which then forwards the payment to NASA. The U.S. government funds NASA using federal revenue from income, corporate, and other taxes. The budget also provides incentives for private businesses to partner with the government on space station operations, deep space explorations, and small satellite groups. The space economy also includes 8 U.S. government space budgets outside of NASA. So this space economy, they have their own economy. So what are these 8 budgets? It's a Department of Defense, that's part of NASA, Area 50. Y'all gonna get into all that. National Reconnaissance Office, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the Department of Energy, Federal Aviation Administration, National Science Foundation, Federal Communications Commission, and United States Geological Survey 4. NASA's budget expanded by more than 85% from 1998 through 2021. Their budget expanded to more than 85%. In some years, Congress appropriated more money for it than the president requested. This is NASA. Now, you're going to say, so why did this matter? You have to know this organization that has given us all this information about our Earth. Deceptive occultists who is anti-Christ. They hate the Most High. They hate creation. So the key purpose is to make you believe that there is no creator, that we are all stupid for believing that there is a creator, that we are special on Earth, that we are regarded highly, right? And this is where the flat earth and Pangea theory comes from.
May be surprised to learn that it was a man named Abraham Ortelius, a famous cartographer from the 1500s, who first proposed the idea that the flood of Noah may have been responsible for tearing apart the Americas from Europe and Africa. Antonio Snyder Pellegrini would first theorize the modern concept of continental drift, in which he illustrated 2 maps depicting the continents of the world as once joined together. German geologist Alfred Wegener would propose his own version of the theory, known today as Pangea. Antonio was snubbed of this honorary title. His crime was citing the Book of Genesis. The Book of Genesis laid out exactly what happened, starting with what the Bible calls the fountains of the great deep opening. It wouldn't be until the 1950s that technology initially developed to detect submarines underwater would stumble across these gigantic scars from the fountains of the great deep that had split open, exactly as the Bible had described. How did a book, thousands of years old, know exactly what was at the bottom of the ocean floor? The Bible says that first, these giant subterranean rifts broke open, piercing the earth's crust, spewing magma that created steam jets that shot up into the sky. Then the book of Genesis says that the waters poured down as torrential rain through the windows of heaven that were opened up, and that the rain lasted 40 days and 40 nights. The supercontinent that the book of Genesis described is now beginning to break apart. At first, the newly partitioned continents oscillate, slamming into each other before starting their ultimate journey of separation. This closes seaways and forms volcanoes and mountains in the Americas and Europe, such as the Appalachian and Caledonian ranges. The seafloor spreads, forming from molten magma, widening the separation between the new continents. Scientists will later discover that the seafloor at the mid-Atlantic ridge is much younger than the seafloor in other parts of the world, exactly as the Bible suggests. As this newly emerging volcanic floor spreads, it subducts under the west coast of North America, binding and releasing, causing massive tsunamis, carrying mud mixed with sea creatures, totally overwhelming the land. As what's known as the conjugate Shatsky rise pushes up during the subduction, the Rocky Mountains also begin to form, along with the Independence Dyke Swarm, a 400-mile-long volcanic region that billows ash that covers half of America. As the western interior seaway emerges during this time, the last of the dinosaurs are flooded, mixed together with sea life, and are buried in mud, sand, and ash in the middle of America. As we near the end of the flood, activity begins to cease as the seafloor stops spreading and begins to cool. As the new massive ocean floors cool and retract, the waters reverse back down into the new ocean basins and recede as much as a mile. All over the earth, trillions of fossils are left behind as incredible evidence of the worldwide catastrophic flood.
Now remember, the only reason you believe you're in outer space is because someone you respect told you were. Other than this, you have no proof.
Any experiment today can prove that the globe doesn't exist. It's impossible.
But then, how can we determine the real shape of the planet? The CTZ researchers collected information on the movement of the sun, the moon, and the stars in different parts of the planet. In this research, which lasted several years, images were recorded by cameras installed in all these places during the day and at night.
We found several differences in the trajectory of the sun. One of the most significant was between Australia and Argentina, which are in the same tropic.
While in Argentina, the sun moves at about 180 degrees. In Australia, it moves almost 270 degrees. Which would be impossible in a spherical Earth model. Another significant example was in the Canary Islands, where a time-lapse of the stars showed a circular movement incompatible with the spherical model of the Earth.
This movement would only be justified if the plate were near the poles in a spherical Earth, which is not the case.
We do not understand that with so many discrepancies we have found, and with the technology available today, no researcher, no scientist, no astronomer, no space agency in the world has perceived any of this.
The discrepancy in the comparison of the trajectory of the sun and the stars between the different points, when related to its geographical position in the current world map, allowed to generate a new geographical model of the continents. In this model, the continents present a size and position somewhat different from the current world map, having the North Pole to the center and the other continents around it.
All the information that we get about the Earth, about space, the moon, and all these things comes from NASA. Every picture that you've ever seen is given to you by NASA. So NASA is also associated with the moon landing being a hoax.
But why are there no stars in the night sky? Why is the American flag waving here when there was no air to cause any breeze?
All the pictures that they take of the Earth are composite images, so no images that we see are actually ever a camera from real far away looking at the Earth. Because they can't just get it all in one shot, so they have to go around the Earth and take a bunch of pictures, and then they piece it together. If you zoom in on them, there's cloud formations that repeat several times, which, how could that ever really happen? They're just copy and pasting things.
International Space Station residents only see about 3% of Earth's surface at any one time.
Because you have to have distrust of who's giving you your information to feel like maybe the flat Earth is feasible, right?
It is photoshopped, but it's has to be. There's a small problem with it because there's a very slight gap in between each orbit. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
They say all the footage of the original moon landing was lost.
You know what they think happened to the original moon tapes? They might have been taped over. It's not a cassette. It's not an old mixtape from college.
We've been unable to track it down.
So we lose all the footage and all the technology was destroyed.
And as I said, even if we had it, we don't have the machines to play it back.
It's incredible that we can keep track of Egyptian pots from 2,000 years ago, but we lose tapes made only 40 years ago.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond.
The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology.
Science only works if you have one magical event that no one has to actually have proof for. Everything stems from the Big Bang Theory. Something the size of a pinhead, two atoms connecting, blowing up, and creating everything that's in this, right? And then Einstein thought of the theory of gravity, which is just a theory. You have the Big Bang Theory, the theory of gravity. In the Bible, it talks about the sea, there's the sky, there's the firmament. What the firmament is a dome.
Okay, so really quick, give us a breakdown. What is the flat earth theory and why does it exist?
There's a firmament, so the dome shaped, the heavens are above it. And then it talks about how the earth expands to its four corners. So that also would make you feel like there could be a flat shape to it. We are not on a ball. We're not on a sphere. We're on something that's flat, a flat plane. And Antarctica, which is in the very south, is an ice wall that's around all of the continents. So instead of us being able to go around the world, it's all enclosed by Antarctica's ice wall. And one reason this gets perpetuated and people think it's valid to think Antarctica is the barrier is because the United Nations map is actually the flat earth map model. They have actual borders around this. And then you see all the continents spread out. So if this was a globe, they spread it out like this. In the late 50s, there was a treaty signed by almost all the major countries of power to not let anybody go into Antarctica. You could go on little explorations of it, but nothing without a bunch of people monitoring you, right? And planes don't fly over it. All flight patterns take you away from Antarctica. There was an airplane that was going from the Philippines to Los Angeles. Mid-flight, a woman, her water broke. So they had to make emergency landing. So the flight plan, somehow they ended up in Alaska. To get them from Philippines to Alaska, if you put it on a flat earth map, it's a straight line from the Philippines to Alaska. But when you put it on a globe, it makes no sense. We live in a world that is all based on material things. Materialism really is what controls the country.
This is my shoe closet.
I see it is my closet. Everything here would be designer. Gucci, Louis, Versace.
Money, really it's about sex. It's about objects. It's about egos and how people feel about themselves. All marketing is based off of fears and compulsions to make us be driven to want to do things. Billboards and advertisements and commercials. And it keeps us very occupied on that surface level of life, right? And it makes it easier to control you.
Oh.
We had gangster rap 20 years ago, and all of a sudden the prison system started filling up even faster. You have nowadays with people rapping about Xanax and opiates.
Popping out egg, pills.
So obviously the kids now are putting themselves into a deeper slumper. Like they want to dumb us down and just make us robotic. Things like alcohol are legal, prescription drugs are legal, things that are really killing people. So they want to suppress us.
I personally believe that the bottom of the ocean is space. It's gravity at the bottom. This is my personal opinion. And this is why the lower you go deep down in the water, in the ocean, gravity pulls you apart because that is space. Because when you look at the concept of the flat earth, right? And that's why animals get creepier and weirder and this and that. And they don't successfully explore the bottom of the ocean because what's at the bottom, right? So we're going to get into that. First, the Bible consistently describes the earth as having edges, ends, and corners, not as a sphere, right? Revelations 7 verse 1 speaks of 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth. Isaiah 11 verse 12 repeats this same structure. That's not a one-off metaphor. It's a repeated geographic description. Corners only make sense on a plane, not on a ball. Does a ball have corners? Let's be intelligent. A sphere has no corners, no edges, no ends you can gather people from. For example, in Isaiah 11 verse 12, it speaks of gathering the dispersed from the 4 corners of the earth. Another common point is the idea of the earth being fixed or immovable. Verses like Psalm 93 verse 1 and 1 Chronicles 16 verse 30 says, "The earth shall not be moved." Some interpret that as meaning the earth is stationary at the center of everything. Okay, let's talk about it. So is the earth revolving around the sun? Or is the sun and the moon created for the earth to give light? Is everything created for us and it's revolving around us to give us night and day? And it says, like Job says, the Most High hangs the earth. Let's get into it. The Hebrew word rakia is sometimes argued to mean a solid dome over a flat earth, separating the waters above from the waters below. How could that be if the earth is round? This is one of the stronger points in the flat earth argument because it reflects how ancient Near Eastern cultures often pictured the cosmos. In Job 38 verse 13, it says, God takes hold of the ends of the earth. Again, ends imply boundaries. A globe doesn't have edges you can grasp. Second, scripture describes the earth as fixed and immovable, not spinning or orbiting. Psalms 93 verse 1, the world also is established that it cannot be moved. That's Psalms 93 verse 1. 1 Chronicles 16 verse 30, it says the world also shall be stable, that it be not moved. That shows you already we're not a spinning ball. There's concept, who told us? The Bible does not tell us that there's even other planets out there. That is a concept that we get from these people. We're going to get deeper into that, right? Or the whole concept of galaxies and millions of galaxies and creations that he created. A lot of religions, like the ones I grew up in, Adventists, I grew up Adventist, and they had a prophet named Ellen White that stated that there are other worlds, right? And I know that's going to sound crazy, but we're going to tackle this, what does the Bible say, and how you have to read it for yourself, and how these thoughts, how they seep into an agenda. It's all an agenda. In a debate, press this point. If the earth was spinning at thousands of miles per hour and flying through space, calling it immovable becomes strained. The plain reading is stability and stillness. The firmament, rakia, in Genesis is described like a solid structure, not empty space. Genesis 1 says, God divided waters above from waters below with a firmament. That implies containment, structure, not an infinite vacuum. The word rakia is used elsewhere in scripture in ways that suggest something spread out and solid like a hammered surface. You can strengthen this with Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 22, which describes the firmament as like the color of terrible crystal, stretch over heads. That doesn't sound like empty space. It sounds like a dome-like expanse. The color of terrible crystal? Fourth, the Bible presents a world that is visibly comprehensive from high vantage points, which aligns more naturally with a flat plane. What do we mean by that, right? In Matthew 4 verse 8, Satan shows Jesus all the kingdoms of the world from a high mountain. If it's a globe, how can you see that? If it's a spherical, how can you see all the kingdoms of the world at once on a ball? On a globe, that's not physically possible. But on a flat plane, it makes narrative sense without forcing the text into symbolism. Isaiah 40 verse 22 says, circle, not sphere. The Hebrew word chug refers to a circle or circuit like a flat disc, not a 3D ball. If scripture meant sphere, there were other words that could convey that idea. So even the verse most often used against this view doesn't actually describe a globe. For those that want to argue this is only poetic language the Bible was using, you can't decide what's poetic and what's not. Why are corners, ends, firmament, and immovable earth all dismissed as metaphor, but circle is taken literally to mean a sphere? The issue isn't what modern science claims. The question is whether scripture, taken at face value, describes a flat and closed world. If the Bible is the standard, then its language should be trusted as intentional, not dismissed as just poetic. Whether it conflicts with modern views, scripture speaks plainly. The question is whether we're willing to let it speak or whether we reinterpret it to fit modern assumptions. Now let's move to part 3 or 4 or whatever. The moon landing is fake. Let's speak about how this is all to discredit Yahuwah, as we stated, because imagine if we believe that this earth was created for us as humans, because a lot of people feel insignificant, like there is no God, there is no one that loves us and protects us, right? And there is no meaning to life. Man is always searching for meaning to life, right? But imagine you're on a globe, you woke up, and this is my free will video that I did that I think it's in this playlist. If it's not, I'm going to add it, and I'm also going to pin it underneath the pin playlist in the comments as well, if you want to watch that specifically, because we tackled the concept of free will, because this is a subject that stops a lot of people from following Yahuwah. Like, why is there evil in the earth? We tackle all of that in the video. If we are created by this being that is loving and patient and kind, why is there evil in the world? We can't dissect all of that in just one video, so go check that out. But the question is here, if you're in an earth, you were born, you didn't decide your gender, your race, your color, you didn't decide who your parents are. You were born into this earth, and you're able to breathe in the atmosphere of the earth. They can't throw you into the ocean. You will drown because you're not a fish. You are a species that is in a climate that is made just for you. Every herb and plant that grows from the ground that is edible has the vitamins, the nutrients, the chemicals that your body needs to survive. The very air you breathe shows you that This, you being here, is not an accident. Everything works for us. The moon shines to give us the light by night. The sun, if you don't have vitamin D, I was vitamin D deficient for a minute when I was in college because I was indoors working so much, and I saw what it did to me, that I need the sun, its rays, to the point where doctors were prescribing me supplements, vitamin D supplements. But this is something that your body needs. How can we say that this was an accident? But they want to make you believe it was a big bang, an accident that just happened and then poosh, this was created. Say it was a big bang. Say Yahuwah's mouth spoke creation into existence. And that is the bang that they were talking about. It was him speaking and life was created. How about that narrative? Because he said, let there be light, and boom, there was light. Let the waters be divided and separated from each other to create land, and boom, that was created. And from the ground, he created man, and he made animals. What if his mouth speaking was the Big Bang? But they want to make you believe, no, it's not, it's an accident. And now you're deciphering which God, which deity to give that power to.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
Maybe it'll, that looks like it's waving in the breeze.
Representative of mankind may well have gone to the moon in 1969, but our research suggests that images of the Apollo landings are not a true and accurate record of such an event. Here is what appears to be the Apollo 11 crew's view of the Earth across the blackness of space.
Could you describe what you're looking at, over?
Do you think we did? But why did the choice be made to take this all-important first view of Earth from 130,000 miles out by standing well back, away from the window? During the sequence, after the camera has zoomed in, surprisingly, something comes between the camera and the Earth, partly obscuring the view. Obviously, this could not happen if they were shooting directly out of the window. It would not then be possible for anything to get midway between the camera and the Earth. And now in this wider view, there's also an interior light in the shot. How can that possibly happen? Had they been filming the real Earth from a position back from the window, it would be difficult to keep the subject well framed. If they had been filming the real Earth when zoomed in, the edge of the window would not be sharp. It would be out of focus like this and spoil the shot, because the focus would have been set at infinity.
Not surprisingly, a growing number of intelligent thinking people are beginning to realize that all was not well with Apollo. So why aren't professionals in the aerospace industry speaking out? Some have spoken out. Bill Wood lives in California. He is a highly qualified scientist with degrees in mathematics, physics, and chemistry. Wood has worked with many major contractors to the United States government, including McDonnell Douglas, and also with engineers employed on the Saturn V, the Apollo launch vehicle. He's been granted high security clearance for a number of top-secret U.S. government projects.
A lot of the people that I have had contact with in the aerospace industry want desperately to believe that this actually happened, because it's a source of pride that their profession contributed, and particularly for the people who worked on the Apollo program. To many of them, this was the most wonderful achievement that they ever produced during their entire life, and they would much rather think of it that way.
The sun creates parallel shadows. The shadows cast by the rocks in the foreground should have been east-west, like the lens shadow here. When natural sunlight is illuminating objects on flat terrain, this result is impossible, but this result is consistent with illumination from a closely positioned artificial source of light. Yes, because according to the official record, no artificial lighting whatsoever was taken to the moon. Let's pause here for a moment and ask why there should be a letter of the English alphabet stamped onto a rock on the moon's surface, and why there's a C also marked on the ground. Surely we're looking at the deliberate planting of crops on a previously designated portion in the foreground of a photographic film set. Aldrin cannot be standing in natural sunlight in this image, because the surface around him is not evenly lit, as would be the case with light from the sun.
Interesting that NASA, via its media representative, declares itself not accountable to the public for its actions.
NASA and other connected agencies knew that they couldn't get to the moon and back. All right, they had to simulate it. I have worked for ARPA, and I know that they have the highest level scientists. So NASA and NSA and other assorted agencies went to MIT. This is a super secret project. Tell us how we can simulate it. All Apollo communications were handled from and to NASA, so they had complete control.
The Apollo communication links were controlled by none other than NASA itself. In these circumstances, how could we know for sure that the images from NASA were those of events that were actually occurring at that moment? During the 13th hour of the 13th day of their 13th Apollo mission. How very remarkable. Remember, the command module was named the Odyssey and the lunar module Aquarius. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius figure. Not to mention when the moon was in the 7th house.
This is the dawning of Aquarius.
Indeed, the words used to announce their accident to Houston, "We have a problem," were first spoken in much the same circumstances in 2001, A Space Odyssey.
Could it be relevant that the Apollo 13 landing site that never was took its name from the 16th century Venetian monk Fra Mauro, who was the instigator of a map that never was?
On 3 separate occasions, our office asked NASA's Public Relations Department for every single picture of an astronaut on the surface of the moon. Many duplicates were sent. In all, fewer than 20 pictures were found, including first-hand investigation on site at the agency's vaulted archives. Also surprising is the scarcity of photographs of the mission's chief pioneer, Neil Armstrong. The greatest achievement in human history, and of the man whose first step echoed around the world, dawning a new age of scientific enlightenment, there is only one full-body picture of him on the moon, besides this ghostly reflection. Perhaps he feared liability, should the whole conundrum later become unraveled. In fact, in the more than 30 years since the event, aside from NASA's initial press conference and the occasional brief anniversary remarks, he has never given one on-camera interview to anyone, ever. Despite the fact that during ground tests, there was a real concern for the vehicle falling into the hole the engine created as it descended. Someone apparently forgot to create a burn crater underneath the lunar module's 10,000-pound thrust engine. In these enlargements, it looks as though the lunar module was simply placed there. Not even one speck of moon dust on the landing pod. And what about stars? On the moon, with no atmosphere, they must have been quite a sight to behold. Yet there is seldom any mention of them, if ever, by any of the astronauts. The answer? Not to talk about the stars. Ever.
When you looked up at the sky, could you actually see the stars and the solar corona in spite of the glare?
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon. I don't recall during the period of time that we were photographing the solar corona what stars we could see. I don't remember seeing any.
They took 3 automobiles to the moon. They never took a photographic telescope. Had they done so, they would have been able to see farther into the universe than had ever before been realized. The cost of the 3 moon rovers in 21st century currency? Nearly $60 million each, though they had fewer parts than a Jeep. Then there's the flag, blowing in the wind, at least twice, on the atmosphereless moon. We now realize that perhaps the reason Neil Armstrong has never given an on-camera interview is because he doesn't want to lie anymore. NASA's highest-ranking official, James Webb, resigned without explanation just days before the first Apollo mission. All 3 Apollo 11 astronauts also resigned shortly after their return. Neil Armstrong made a rare public appearance and held back tears as he spoke these brief cryptic remarks.
We have only completed a beginning. We leave you much that is undone. There are great ideas undiscovered. Breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers.
Bill Casing was an analyst and engineer at Rocketdyne, the company that designed the Apollo rockets.
The whole thing then seemed phony to me. I think it was an intuitive feeling that what was being shown was not real.
Brian O'Leary was a NASA astronaut in the 1960s and served as a science advisor during the Apollo moon missions.
I can't say 100% for sure whether these men walked on the moon. It's possible that NASA could have covered it up just in order to cut corners and to be the first to allegedly go to the moon.
People assumed that the nation that won the space race would win the Cold War. We defined that as being first to the moon.
During the 60s, they said, if you can't make it, fake it.
The launch of Apollo's Saturn V rocket was real. It just never sent astronauts to the moon.
Then, in order to account for their disappearance, they simply orbited the Earth for 8 days. The 8th day, the command capsule separated from the vehicle and descended to Earth, as of course was shown in films.
Area 51 is one of the most heavily guarded facilities in the United States. If you went in and tried to get some information, you could be shot and killed.
Casing theorizes that the lunar landings were actually filmed in Nevada's high desert, at the top-secret military base known as Area 51. Russian spy satellite photos of Area 51 reveal not only a series of hangars that resemble movie sound stages, but also barren moon-like areas which coincidentally are covered with craters.
The noise level of a rocket engine is up into the 140, 150 decibel range. How would it be possible to hear astronauts' voices against the background of a running rocket engine? To have a powerful rocket engine blast the surface of the moon, blasting away all of the dust, and then find footprints surrounding the lunar lander, that to me would be an impossibility.
If they had truly landed on the moon, this dust would have then descended on the lunar lander, on the footpads, and we find not a trace of dust.
This tape was shot on what was reported to be the first of Apollo 16's lunar excursions, and this video was from the next day at a different location. NASA claims the second location was 2.5 miles away, but when one video is superimposed over the other, the locations appear identical. Virgil Gus Grissom was selected as one of the original 7 astronauts. A family man and a veteran of several space flights, he was a national hero. But Grissom was also an outspoken critic of the space program and was quoted as saying, "Someone's going to get killed." On January 27, 1967, 2 years before the first moon landing, Grissom and his crew boarded the Apollo 1 capsule for a full-scale simulation. First, the capsule's communication systems failed. Suddenly, the capsule burst into flames with the astronauts sealed inside. Tragically, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee lost their lives before ever leaving the launch pad. Gus Grissom's family believes the Apollo 1 fire was no accident.
I think it was intentionally sabotaged by someone.
We may never know. The cause of the fire is still a mystery, and the capsule remains locked away at a military base. Thomas Ronald Barron was a safety inspector during Apollo 1's construction. Barron testified before Congress that the Apollo program was in such disarray that the United States would never make it to the moon.
There been any pressure on you by NASA? Nothing. We were, my wife and I were somewhat harassed at home when the first thing built some time back. But it's gone away now.
He claimed his opinions made him a target. Then exactly 1 week after he testified, Barron's car was struck by a train. Barron, his wife, and stepdaughter were killed instantly. Barron's report mysteriously disappeared, and to this day, it has never been found. Between 1964 and 1967, a total of 10 astronauts lost their lives in freak accidents.
To keep something that's a lie wrapped up and covered over, you've got to eliminate all the people that can talk about it.
Very few people at NASA knew. Thing is so departmentalized. You got the person building the bolts in Houston or doing this in Seattle or doing this in Florida. No one knows the full picture.
Any human being traveling through the Van Allen belt would have been rendered either extremely ill or actually killed by the radiation within a short time thereafter.
500 miles above the Earth, these bands of intense radiation surround our planet and are thousands of miles thick. Other than the Apollo missions, no other manned space flight has attempted to pass through this deadly radiation. To protect the astronauts, the capsule would have needed 6 feet of lead shielding, according to physicist Ralph Rene.
The astronauts were protected by a thin film of aluminum, when here on Earth they put a lead shield on us when they take a dental x-ray.
Although the effects of radiation are horrific, ranging from hair loss to cancer to death, the solar flares had no adverse effect on the Apollo 16 crew. Rene also theorizes that the astronauts' liquid-cooled spacesuits could not have provided sufficient protection from the intense heat and radiation.
If those suits do what NASA says they can do, then I want to see them suit up a guy or two, put him into 3 Mile Island, the pit there that's still hot, and have them clean up the mess.
This is the main reason why the Russians never really intended to send the men to the moon.
According to one of their chief cosmonauts, it was certainly a factor.
We had no idea how human would be affected by the radiation. We suspected that possibly the radiation could even penetrate through the craft itself.
To this day, the Russians have never sent a man to the moon.
I say all this because the moon landing is the conspiracy Can you guys not see? This whole series I've been doing has been opening my eyes to the conspiracy against the Most High. And we all have been guilty of falling for this deception, for this lie. Like I've admitted in several videos, even my language, I used to use occult language and I didn't even know, even in past videos that I've done here, that I'm going back trying to edit out or even delete whole videos together, because that's how good the deception was. But the Most High said that even the very elect may fall for these false prophecies that the Christian church teaches you to wait for, and prophecies that have already been accomplished but is twisted, all because we're not really reading and asking for Yahuwah, his spirit, to dwell in us to teach us. I do believe, I have a theory again, that's my opinion, that Antarctica is one of the places that the astronauts go to when they launch, blast off. They go land in Antarctica until it's time to pretend to land back on Earth. That's just my theory. I'm not saying it's fact or anything like that. And this is why no one is allowed in Antarctica. This is why you can't explore it. It's limited. And also, I went to Iceland. But when I went to Iceland, when we were landing, it was cold. It was around December that we went. And when we were landing at the airport, I couldn't help but feel like this looks like the moon from the airplane, because their airport that we landed at was a vast plain, and like, this looked like the moon. I said that to the young lady that was sitting next to me. She was like, that is true. I said, wouldn't it be funny? And that was about 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I went to Iceland, and yet I didn't even know the Most High like that well, you know? But I said, wouldn't it be funny if this is the spot they use as well? They close it off, or Iceland has a lot of spots where they can fake a moon exploration as well. And then I went to research it, just a quick Google search, and boom, Iceland is one of the key places they use to do moon landing simulations. Can you imagine? These people are playing in our faces, and it's right there. Right there. I choose to believe, I'll wrap this up saying that I believe the Most High is the creator of all things. He is the intelligent design that these occultists try to label Lucifer with, right? He is the being that made us, and we did not make ourselves. And man has had this agenda, and this specific group, this specific people, they have had this agenda to discredit the Most High, to make us believe a lie, to discredit the people of the Most High, to make us believe that not only another people are the real people, but also that the prophecies for the people of the Most High is over, and it's not. And because the world is confused about who the real people of God is, they're going to be really surprised when Yahushua returns or comes. And that is very interesting to me. And I'm going to leave it at that. You guys know what I think, but I want to know what you think in the comments. Am I reaching? Did you have a gut feeling this was true? What do you think about all of this? I love you guys so much. Stay tuned for the next coming videos. I know it's taking me a little longer to upload on this channel, but y'all see. Y'all know how it is behind the scenes, and I am working on the website. Thank you for all who has been donating to the website, for the website and other avenues I have to where I could place my videos in case YouTube decides to pull another stunt like they did. And I appreciate that. I love you guys so much, and I will show you guys how you can continue to support what we're doing over here. I will see you in the next one. I just want to say a huge thank you to all the supporters that have sent Cashapps and PayPal. I've seen it all. And I just want to say thank you to you guys who understand why a lot of creators are pushing away from Super Thanks and going towards PayPal and Cashapp because of how YouTube is doing us behind the scenes with it. I appreciate it, though I cannot send everyone a personal message or personally say thank you. I want to end every video by saying thank you because it really helps to push out content unfiltered to you guys. May the Lord reward you tenfold.